Apparently you would have like we had future or not future soldiers. We had like when I was in a basic training brigade, we had the soldiers because we'd have to give them hand sanitizer because this is during the H1N1
Right.
situation. So back in
Right.
'09 ish, and we have to give every single soldier a little vial of, or it's like they had these special Purell actually did a line for soldiers where it looked like a canteen kinda, and like you know it was like the OD green color and everything,
Hmm.
and we'd have to issue them to all the new initial entry soldiers,
Yeah, yeah,
and they started drinking it because they were like so they missed drinking, I guess, and
yeah.
they were
Right.
withdrawing, and so they started chugging hand sanitizer, and I didn't catch them. Like I didn't care. That wasn't my lane. I just gave it to
Yeah.
the battalions, and the battalions distributed down the line. So come to find out, through the drill sergeants that would come and smoke at the smoke shack with us, they were like, "Man, we had to kick another kid out today for chugging hand sanitizer." And I was like, "You what? Like they're doing what now?"
Yeah.
And yeah, and then lo and behold, like that became the thing. And then we had to like, I guess like the pandemic ended before it became like its own pandemic of like
Oh,
people.
you're doing it wrong. That's not how you use it.
No, you're supposed to pour it into a water bottle and then take a shit in the water bottle and then put a balloon over it
Oh
and
yeah,
then
yeah,
fill
yeah.
it up and then
What
yeah,
is
and
that
then
called?
you can
Yipping
have it.
or what is it? What
I
is it
don't
called
remember
when
what
you?
it was called.
There's like a term. It's not yiffing. That's something
Huffing.
else.
I always called
No,
it huffing,
no, not huffing.
but
Huffing
that's
is
like,
air. They get the can air and then they,
oh,
you
that's right.
know,
Yep,
they
yep.
get those yips, where they shiver.
I
It's
remember those days
bad, dude.
back in my day, back in 2004. I remember
Yeah,
like we were doing it, and like there would be a helicopter go over because we doing it in the barracks or whatever. And this
yeah.
is like in Iraq, and we had the
Okay,
heliport right
are you
there.
saying? Are you telling me that you huffed air?
I did. I like, and I was like an abuser. Like
Oh
I was a,
man,
yeah, I was in bad shape when it came to,
it's bad, dude.
man,
I've
it
done
really
some
was.
bad drugs in my day, but I never huffed air. That's pretty
It's
bad,
a good
dude.
time. Now I'll tell you, um, I'm not.
It's not like whippets though, right? It's not the same thing.
I don't know.
It's never done a whippet.
I don't
You
know.
know, whippets.
The I never did whippets, right? I
Uh-oh.
assume it's very similar, but
I get it actually.
the so like we would huff and like the helicopters would go over, right? And you would hear the like you already have that
Yeah,
noise,
yeah,
and then like the helicopters adding to it, it was like surround sound, and you'd like
yeah,
for like 30 seconds is all the longer it lasted, and then it would go away and you'd be good to go. Now they've added a chemical to the canned air so that it
yeah.
just tastes horrible. Like if you smell canned air now, like when you're just spraying and you catch a whiff of it, it takes me back to the glory days, right? You yep, all right. No, but if you smell it, like it smells terrible. Like I can't imagine how it tastes anymore. It's been a long time since I've
They did
huffed
that.
air.
They did something similar during Prohibition back in the day, where people were drinking because they couldn't get booze. They were just drinking like motor oil or what is it like machine oil that you use to clean machines. They're drinking that to get shit housed, and so they did this thing where they put like a chemical in it. I forget what it was, something similar that made it to where if you drank it, you died.
That's
So a
awesome.
bunch of people were drinking it and dying, and then like eventually the prohibition ended. But that really happened, man. The government did
Yeah,
that.
and they did it
Speaking
again
of
with Air
fucked up shit,
Duster.
yeah,
So
exactly.
we
So
thought we
speaking
thought we
of
were
fucked up
beyond
shit, the government
prohibitions, but
did fuck you over. Yeah, exactly.
the
So
no,
it's
yeah, and
it
then the
just
Obama administration put that crap in cigarettes too. Like we always complain about cigarettes have too many chemicals in them, and then Obama went ahead and added more
you
chemicals.
know,
Yeah, thanks Obama. He added that chemical because you used to be able to be like my Aunt Gussie. I always default to my Aunt Gussie because she was like my favorite old timey aunt, and she was my great aunt, and she'd always sit there with her cigarette in her fingers, and the ash would be like this long, and she would never shake it. She would just continue to smoke, and the ash would go all the way down to the butt of the cigarette, and she would still sit there, and she could like wave her hand, and she could put her hand, she can grab stuff from the counters, and there'd be like this 3-inch long ash off of her cigarette, and but that's how she smoked, and then she would put it out, which it was already out for like a long time usually.
I used to know somebody that do the same thing, and you'd watch it and just be like,
it's going.
Wondering if it's gonna fall or like like suspense. It's like suspense. Like how do they achieve that? Remember we used to call smoke it to the ash, brother?
Smoke it to the
where you'd
ash,
hold
brother.
it up. You'd hold it up so that it never like the ash never fell. So you're always holding like a big thing of ash.
Yeah, and Obama did away with that because then like, you know, if you're not actively puffing on the cigarette, it goes out. So I mean, which is great for people who smoke in bed or whatever. But whatever. Other than that, like there were times, you know, I'd just be sitting there with a cigarette, and next thing I know, the cigarette would be out, and I remember a better time, right, when you could sit there and you just sit with it on your chest while you were just soaking in the sun, and then you'd look down and you'd have like ash all over your shirt because the whole thing burnt all the way to the butt, and you're like, oh shit, you know. And then you light another one. I mean, those were the glory days of smoking cigarettes. You know, you can't do that anymore.
Look at aim.
So what were you talking? I'm not going to address my outfit yet. I assume people in the chat are.
I thought you were going to do your shot.
I will. Well, we normally do it after we do our
opening
rant,
remarks,
right? And then, but I will say, welcome to Mr. Decker, Jay Coop, Yakov, Mike in Manitoba.
Nice.
And our guest from last week, actually, she's back in the chat too.
Oh yeah, hey.
Under the pseudonym, right? Is that the word? Us the Trees. So harass her in the chat if you want. That's her name. Go ahead and tag her so you can say what you want to say. No, but yeah, V, go ahead. What are you thinking about? What's on your mind this week?
Well, okay, I'll give you a brief overview. This week I've been doing a lot of watching of porn. I've been watching a lot of porn this week. And so, which, you know, it's not uncommon for me to watch porn. You know, I think everybody in our audience knows that I'm a connoisseur, if you will. But I noticed something this week that kind of like was off-putting, and I thought it might be something to like bring up. And I'm like kind of realizing that, you know, I come from an era where, you know, I watched porn evolve. And and I know this is kind of like, what? But think about like when you were a kid and like you first found like that titty magazine in the field, like when you were coming home from school and you crossed over through a field and it was like this crumpled hustler.
Like the Stand By Me of pornography.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Hey, you kids want to see a porno mag?
yeah, exactly. So like I've seen this evolution of it, right? And I like the term I've heard lately. Somebody was calling them adult reproductive documentaries.
You know, that sounds like a bunch of newspeak gobbledygook.
Yeah, like. But okay. This is what let me get to the meat and potatoes here. This is what I was thinking recently as I was watching porn, and like I like high quality. You know, I like good quality. You know, I come from the days where it was like 480p and it's like, you know, fuzzy and like, you know, you had that channel that you'd flip back and forth and you'd see like the fuzzy boob and you'd keep flipping back. So you go, oh, there's the boob, and then flip again so you can see it again and never unfuzz. But like I noticed something recently about HD porn, and I think that I'm like turned off by it. Like you know, like sexually and like physically like turned off by it. Like I'm like, I like shake my head, and it's like too real now. Like, I don't know if you've ever, like, I know I can't, like, relate this to people anymore because people probably aren't like me. But there's this 4K porn now, and it's so fucking real. Like, if you have a 4K TV or you can watch 4K and you have surround sound like this, and we're going all out here. And I urge you, those of you who are avid fans of adult film, to watch it in 4K with the big sound and see how you feel about it afterwards. Because my experience has been that I don't like it. I do not like HD porn. And here's why. It's because it's like too real. You know, like it takes away the fantasy. Like, first off, you can see clear as day every single pimple and rash on a girl. No. Like clear as day, and it's common now. Like it's not something like, you know, with a 480p you go, oh, it's just a nice smooth buttocks. But now, hello, you there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Oh yeah.
Oh, it sounded like it cut out.
No.
But now you've got this like what do you call it? Pimply butts, and then like you can see like the scars from like boob job scars,
And like
like
C-sections and stuff.
yeah, like clear as day, like clear as day, dude, like clear as day. And then like here's something else that I noticed, like girls that have like boob jobs and they're like kind of like over the top boob, which I like big fake boobs. I'm a fan, but like I've never noticed this before, but girls that have like fake boob jobs, like their nipples get like elongated, so they're not round any like. It's the weirdest thing. They're like these or vertical oblong like nipples that are like oval shaped now. Like they're not round anymore. Like
Huh.
you have to kind of like pay attention to notice. But this is like clear as day if you're watching it in 4K. And then what's worse is if you have like the good 4K audio to go with it, like all the sounds is kind of off-putting too. Like I've never been more offended by a queef in my life because it's so audible. Like dude, come on, and it's like these are things that like I'm normally like I guess during intercourse I would normally be disgusted by, but here's the thing is I honestly have not had sex with the lights on in probably decades. So those are things that I've never really noticed, until like I'm watching it and I go, whoa, if I saw this and like I don't know, man, a queef like that's and oh man.
So
Like
like
that's
part of me is imagining you sitting in your I guess your living room. I was going to call it a porn palace, but it's essentially a living room, right?
yeah.
With your big 4K TV, and then you've got your surround sound and like the bar in front, and I mean like this flawless system, and
Yeah.
you've got splattering noises and squishing and just coming from all directions to where you're like moving, and then you look up and then you see the pimpled asshole, and then you
Yeah,
see
dude.
like the freckles between the butt cheeks, and like I'm, am I imagining it correctly then?
Yeah, no, you're
Is that how
absolutely
it
right.
goes down in your
Yeah, yeah.
apartment? How
I
much
mean,
time like so forgive me.
no, no.
I'm it's been a while since I've given up porn, and I'm not bashing anybody who still watches porn, obviously, to each their own. I thought this was America, and
Yeah.
I've given it up, but like from my back in the day when I used to peruse porn,
Hmm.
it was like a 30-second thing for me. I'd turn it
Hmm.
on, find the one that I like, boom, bing bang, done, and then I go on
Yeah.
about my business. But like the way you've got kind of a setup and you've committed this um this theater system, like at Best Buy when you go in
But
and
you
they've got like
forget
the
I'm like a
separate
film
system.
buff. I don't like I always tell people I don't watch like porno. I watch adult film. Like I
Oh yeah, yeah.
enjoy it for the fact that it's like filmed well or there's like, plot or even like the acting. I love all of that. Like all that stuff to me is like a part of the experience, and I think like yeah, amateur, I'm like, it's kind of like cheesy or whatever, but there's some good ones out there. And then of course, as I've explained before, I'm a huge fan of women. Like
Right.
I love women all shapes and size. Well, of certain shapes and sizes. But I mean, my point is this is like I'm totally like off put by like my first experience was like this is too much. Like we're getting too real here. Like
So
it's not
did you turn
fantasy
off
anymore.
motion blur? There's that thing like where when you watch movies now on 4K, and then you've got the 4K DVD player and the Blu-ray and all that. Well,
Yeah.
I guess 4K is now its own format, but when you watch it, does it look almost like a soap opera where you turn off that
It's
motion
so
blur?
yes, dude. It's so fucking
Okay.
clear. It's unbelievable. Like, and now imagine like that type of clarity, and then some chick just like tossing a dude's salad. Like that to me is just like the word. Like, what am I like? I've never been to the point in my life where I thought, what am I doing with my life? Like here I am, and there's just this salad tossing going on, and that's not something I want to see. And I just like shake my head and go, what is this? What is the world coming to? Is this what people get off on now?
Well, it
It's
reminds
like
me of that episode of Family Guy when Fox switches to 4K, and remember they were talking about the hot anchor, and then as soon as it switches to 4K, it's just like she's hideous, and they end up not watching it anymore or whatever.
yeah, it's awful. You're just like, oh, this is no. Yeah, I've never been more ashamed, and I've never been ashamed about it. But this is the first time that I was like, what's happening to me, dude? I gotta get a girlfriend or something, man. What is going on here? 4K, like that's the whole reason for the setup is for that alone. Like thinking to yourself, like, yeah, finally I can watch porn on a gigantic TV in my living room, butt ass naked,
So
and
how
nobody's gonna say.
how much
Go
time
ahead.
do you spend watching, like in a given day, adult films? How much time do you watch adult films? Would you say? Just give me like a number that you feel comfortable with.
Going on to that line, huh? Well, I guess I don't know. I mean, it depends. It's like a hankering. One day I'll just be like, man, I want to watch a lot of porn, and I'll just do it all day, literally like all day. And like I said, it's like a film thing for me. It's not just like I watch porn to jack off. Obviously that's a part of it. But I mean, this is like a film thing. Like there are some that I watch and I'm like, oh, the lighting is so bad on this one. Like, why would you film it like this?
Do you
Why
ever
would you?
write letters to them?
I wish I should. I sometimes I think, man, I would film like an amazing porn. And there's like really good porn. Like there's like companies that they spend the big dollar and they make like parody porn or like porn that's
Right,
like
right.
based on movies and it's like super high like blockbuster movie quality porno. And like they're good. Yeah, they're good. I'll agree with you. I'll agree that they're good out there. But then there's some that they're like the low budget kind and they just got the lighting perfectly right and it's the perfect girl and I think, man, this whole thing is like they could be doing it on a budget and still get like, you know, what what you're trying to get out of it. I guess to put it simply, I don't just watch porn to jack off, man.
Huh.
If that's what it was all about for me, I just buy a hooker. There's a different experience for me and I think I've made that clear.
I respect that.
But
I
yeah, I
respect your.
appreciate it.
Uh, I think you should. I think you should be writing letters or like reviewing. Can you
Yeah.
review? Like, is there a? I mean, yeah, I
Well,
guess you could. Like,
get
you
on
could.
you can get on the sites and be like, and the reviews are like, man, that girl had a sweet ass.
And
That's
yeah,
all
and
the
yours
reviews.
should be like, hey, the lighting was. I think if you would have moved the light over to the
I
whatever.
could totally see the boom mic in this scene. Something like that.
Yeah,
I
be
get
that
what
guy. Be that
that
guy
guy.
and help
Listen to.
shape the porno or the porn industry, right?
Oh,
Um,
I'd happily, I'd happily make my own. I'd happily film my own. But there's a big. Do I want to be in it or do I want to shoot the actual the actual movie? Like which part is it? And like I don't know how I'd feel about shooting porn. Like there's part of me that's like I could shoot a really good porn. But then there's part of me that's like I don't know how weird that would be standing there shooting two people banging. Like uncomfortable, like oh, is this so awkward? But I
I
don't know.
think you would be able
I could
to
probably do
create.
POV. I could probably do POV porn. That's pretty popular.
Get that
POV.
VR point of view.
I think if I did anything, that's the way I'd have to go.
Why not? But can't isn't that part of the? Again, I don't know much about the adult entertainment industry. Only what I know from the movie Girl Next Door.
Right.
The which is not a porn. It sounds like a porno.
Yeah.
But that's with our boy Timothy Oliphant. Uh,
Love that
the
guy.
yeah, like I can't say. You know what? Let's to Timothy Oliphant.
Yeah. Toast to Timothy Elephant with his. Have you always seen
You
this?
boys seen
The CD,
Jackie Brown? Or I don't remember.
what's
Um,
the CD? Like
Britney
Enya or
Spears.
yeah, Britney Spears. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I thought that was part of the whole thing as like the director or the creator of this porn. You kind of like tested the actresses, right?
Huh.
Like, isn't that part of like the casting
Are you
couch
talking
thing?
about like, the casting couch?
Yeah,
Just in general, like, that's all movies. That's all.
right,
That's movies in general.
right. But I'm saying like you do that right as the porn director. Like you'd be able to get in there and say, hey, let's
Yeah,
do this.
there are porn that is just casting couch porn,
Right.
where it's like a dude that's like, you want to be in porn. Here's something really funny. There is like really funny like outtakes of those type of things where ugly chicks come in to try and get into porn, and the dudes just like belittle the shit out of them. They're like, you're busted, right? Like you're ugly as shit. You're not gonna get in this porn industry. Like go home, do some exercise. Like that's how straightforward they are with these women, which is to me hilarious. Not to belittle women or anything.
Well, I mean that's like 90% of our show, right?
I guess you're right,
So
but
I do want to
yeah.
I do want to say something. There's been some good comments in the chat.
Oh, all right.
Yakov actually he said Jank. That's the name of the shit and piss cocktail, right? Jank.
It's a real thing.
Yeah,
Oh, jank. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. With the
and he calls
I
it butt
typing.
hash.
Yeah, but that's classic. But disgusting, to be honest.
Mike in Manitoba says he's pretty sure Obama smokes in bed. He absolutely does. um, well, his husband. I mean, it's like a
Yeah.
courtesy, right?
Yeah.
Jessica said, "Bro, the prohibition was the first time that we as a country invited government control our lives. It's been downhill ever since, which we've seen, currently, that
Right.
whole situation." And then Yakov asked when we're going to get that Ruth Bader Ginsburg deep fake porn. Um, welcome, King Cracker, Buzz Busby.
Guys.
Who else is joined? Who else is joined that I missed? All right, I think I got every. Oh, Jankum. I'm sorry, Jankum. And then also Gil was masturbating in the shower to our discussion. So with that, we can move on to what is the top? Are we ready to move on to the topic?
Yeah, let's do the big reveal there.
Tonight, can
Your,
anyone in the chat guess what we're
your
talking about
life
tonight?
guess.
I gave
Yeah.
a lot of hints on
Yes,
Twitter.
I actually, mine was really, really like subtle though. My hint was like really
Well,
subtle.
yeah, yours was wasn't it
Oh,
like
shoot.
a blank machine?
Yeah. From Napoleon Dynamite. When he's
um,
like, forget to put the crystals in, and then he shocks his balls.
remember what was it?
I
It
think
was
I could throw a football over the mountains.
back in my day, man. I could throw a football, and then he tucks the meat and it hits homeboy on
The
the
best
bicycle.
scene ever.
But yeah, no, there was also like Rob and Big. They found that guy who supposedly had a time machine that was like the size of a pack of cigarettes or whatever. This is back in like 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
And he had like this time machine, and you had to like spin around on this little thing, and then it was just very complicated. It didn't work, obviously. But this dude was like so confident that his time machine worked. And that's the topic for today. Anyways,
Yeah. By the way, time travel. Yeah.
which is why I'm dressed like Marty
The Marty
McFly.
McFly.
So,
See?
and this is all stuff I just had laying around the house. This was imagine like if I would have actually gone out and bought. The only thing I was missing was the jean jacket.
Remember when that movie came out and like 10 years after, when every time somebody did something stupid, you'd go, "Hello, McFly." To someone. It was like the go-to line for
I
making
still
somebody.
do it to my kids. I still say, "Hello, McFly."
Yeah.
um,
It's good.
I wasn't around. I don't think. Well, I mean, I think I just came into existence at the time of Back to the Future. I may actually be Marty and
What did you
Lorraine's
coalesce?
kid. Right?
Coalesced into being. You weren't even like born. You just like formed from nothing.
Right. I transcended into the human existence, into this universe, merely, just by luck, by chance. I happened to be wandering by, a wormhole opened up, and there I was.
Yeah.
Um, but that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about time travel.
Mhm.
And I guess we could start by. Do you want me to just go through these dimensions real quick? So just as because this was like the big takeaway from this
Yeah.
book that I
Yeah.
read.
Yeah. Yeah.
I read this
Sure.
book called Time Travel because I'm big into time travel. I like it. I don't think
Yeah.
it's real yet, but no, I have reservations, obviously, and I'll get
Time
into
travel.
that later.
I think we've already discussed that like time traveling is possible and that we've done it ourselves. You know,
Yeah.
when you fly a plane and then you go to a different time zone.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. What's unfortunate was that book that I was reading was mostly about like the boring, like, oh well, we already do that, because technically if you go, Einstein talked about it in his theory of general relativity that in order to time travel, all you got to do
It's
is
like,
fly by a
good.
black hole and go almost the speed of light, and boom, you time traveled.
Yeah.
Which is all like, I mean, it's not time travel, that's time dilation, and that's the difference
like-
between the two.
Looking into the mirror because the amount of time that light takes to reach your eyes and like process the object, like the now has or the then has become the now.
Well,
So
that
looking into the mirror is time traveling.
yeah, and we are living in a constant state of another time's light or sun, right? Because the sun, it takes 8 minutes for the light from the sun to hit Earth. So technically, the light that we have now is, from 8 minutes ago. So technically, if you want to get into the weird, the boring science stuff about it, like that's the kind of stuff that this book talked mostly
The
about.
Poindexter shit.
Yeah,
The
that
push
nobody
up your
wants to hear.
glasses and go, well, actually, you know.
Actually,
Yeah.
like every
What that dude,
atheist on
everybody told
Twitter.
you about that guy. He'd always go, well, not really though, because if you think about it, every time you said something, he'd have to like antagonize it, and it was never like valid. He'd be like, yeah, McDonald's serves such and such food, and he'd go, not really though, because if you think about it, you'd be like, dude, come on, man. Every
Just
time I say
drop it.
something,
Gosh, dang.
Ugh.
Just you can't just let me be right once.
Exactly. So the dimensions. Tell me about these.
Yeah. So let's so everybody knows, right? There's 11 of them. The end. The first three that are like accepted, like broadly accepted, are the first, second, and third. So you got the x-axis, which is just a line. Then you've got the y-axis, which gives it height. So you've got length and height, and then you've got depth as the third dimension. So at that point, you have a 3D object. But the problem with that is like, and this is something that was introduced by, and I believe it was H.G. Wells when he created this whole time machine book. He was actually the one who coined the term time travel, and
Right.
before that it hadn't existed. And he said that in order there'd have to be like a fourth dimension of time, which means, because you could say, yeah, there's something that has length, width, and depth, but if it doesn't exist for any amount of time, then you're not going to see it. So there has to be this fourth dimension, which is time. So even if it's like and I looked it up, the shortest measure of time, or like the shortest amount of time, is called a Planck time, which is defined as like 5.39 to the negative 44th power seconds. So it's like this super tiny fraction of a time. And even for it to be visible at any point, it has to exist for some amount of time. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. So that's what, when people talk about time being the fourth dimension, that's what they're referring to, because it needs to have time in order to be, in existence, no matter how short that time is. So, and then I can tell you about the other. I'll real quick burn through the other dimensions, because this is something that we tried to talk about before, but I couldn't find it on the fly. I didn't want to fuck it up. So the fifth dimension is a world that's slightly different than ours. The sixth dimension is a plane of possible worlds that started with the same initial conditions as us. So basically, like, exactly what happened to us happened in this other universe or this other dimension, and we can kind of, look at it or whatever and determine the similarities and differences based on decisions that were made throughout time. The sixth dimension is, the seventh dimension is the worlds that started with different initial conditions. And then 8 is a plane of possible universes, histories with different initial starting conditions than ours that branch out infinitely. Then 9 is different laws of physics and initial conditions. This is where I kind of talk about, I think, aliens are not interstellar as much as they are interstellar and interdimensional, because if we understand that the speed of light is the fastest that something can go, which is not actually true anymore. They found out that these neutrinos can travel faster than photons, which is going to throw the physics nerds off a little bit, because everything that they've studied over time is basically being thrown away. So they have different laws of physics. If these aliens can transfer to this other dimension where the laws of physics are non-existent or different than ours, then they can obviously travel great spans of space or whatever without, the amount of time that it would take to do so. Anyways, number 10 is everything possible and imaginable is covered. And then the 11th dimension is kind of like deity level, because it goes beyond our level of comprehension and imagination. So those are the 11 dimensions that are recognized right now. Not necessarily recognized as like real things, but that's what the string theory is trying to prove, what they're trying to do with it. So that's a fun topic that I like to study, and I encourage it in other people. What's your take on that?
I don't know. It's kind of like over my head, I guess. I know that I'm in a dimension, right? Am I in a dimension right now? Third dimensional,
Well, fourth.
right?
We just talked about
Fourth,
this. V.
fourth dimensional. I'm in the fourth dimension.
You are in the
How
fourth.
do I
You're a four-dimensional being.
four-dimensional being? I
Yeah.
feel like I should have more dimensions than that.
Well, you might. I
Like
guess we'll find
like
out. That's what they're
like
trying to prove.
yeah.
And that's what they
It's
actually.
kind of like baffling. It's one of those things that's over my, we try to watch those Kyrgyzstan videos, and like sometimes I'll watch them and I'll go, this is over my head. I don't even the cartoons can't get through to me. You know what I mean? I'm over here going, what in the world are they talking about? And then I'll just shut it off because I go, this doesn't make any sense.
If a
to
little
me.
tweeting bird bouncing around or whatever, like
Yeah.
different colors, can't get through to you, then I mean, it's a difficult topic because I don't even get half of this crap. And I mean, like, and I say half, I really mean like most of it.
Yeah.
but that's because like I don't get math, and that's where they default to. At a certain point, they're like, well, let's talk about the math, and then they point out on this board, and it's all these formulas, and I'm like, nope. If you can't show me in like pictures and shit,
Well, it's
then
confusing as shit because there's all these like levels to it and things that you go, well, aren't I time traveling right now because time's moving forward? But then at the same time, like what? Like isn't time just something we made up to like keep track of our decaying bodies? Like
Right.
that's the reason why time exists. Is it's like just an idea? It's like abstract.
it's so that
Like
you can get to work on time.
Yeah. So
On
that you
what?
won't get fired. Yeah.
Imagine trying to explain time without using the definition. Try it.
Let's see.
Explain
Like,
it to somebody who doesn't like you encounter somebody who's never who has no comprehension or
I
understanding of
tried
time.
like, okay, so you know how there's the sun is in the sky? It's like, see how the sun goes down, like it ends up like gone, and then the moon comes up. This is how we know, right? That's how we know, basically. We measure it by we measure it by
How we know
by
what?
the phases of, I don't know, like because I don't know. I guess because we have these cycles of day and night, right? I guess I don't know, man. I'd probably that, or I'd go see how you're getting older and your beard grows. Your beard grows. You lose your hair. That's like progression forward, right? But I guess even then that doesn't make sense because that's really just like, what is that? It's decay. That's not time. That's just decay. I don't know. That's a tough one. Yeah, I guess that's why it is so confusing because it's hard to define, which is the same as like anything that's abstract is like, how do you really define it? It's just a construct, man. It's there.
Time is a
It's
human
there.
construct.
Yeah.
So
It
that we
really
can make
is,
it.
though. I think.
It made me realize it when I said, "So you can get to work on time," and then you're like, "Well, what's that? Like,
well-
what do you mean?" Like,
How do I do that? Yeah.
how? Well, you know how when the sun goes down, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so like that time of day, what the what of what?
Yeah. What is it?
It's really
Yeah,
hard to do. Somebody actually, there was a quote, and I don't remember. I'm going to butcher the quote, but it was like, if you want me to understand time, I can do that. If you want me to explain it, I can't. Like, and that's just kind of how it is, and that's I think what we've taken for granted. What we've taken for granted. What are you, a Boulder person?
Yeah. Great.
We've taken that for granted that we don't know what time is. We just recognize it as a thing, and we're just and it was not really agreed upon by anybody. And then since then, we've had to add all this other crap. Like, well, now we also have to keep track of time with the sundial or like a
Yeah.
watch or whatever.
Or like,
Okay,
here's something weird too. Is like, what about like daylight save? Like, we're one of the few countries that do the daylight savings time thing, right?
Mhm.
And it seems to me like, how is it possible that we can just go, you know what? We'll take away an hour. Like, we'll just like move an hour. Like, why are we able to do that? Is that like a
Because-
dumb question? Is that a dumb
no,
question?
it's not, because not like you said, there are other countries I think, and people in Europe can correct me, but I believe they just do it at summer and winter, where they're just like, hey, let's adjust accordingly because of the thing. And then but then also like Arizona doesn't do time to time change. I think they don't do daylight savings time, which makes sense because Arizona is not like a farming type country, or state. I'm sorry, and they like daylight savings time is primarily to accommodate farmers. It was the whole point of it, because farmers have to get up at a certain time, and they're the cycle of the sun, and the sun going up and coming down, that kind of dictates their day. And
The
so
sun god.
yeah, exactly, Ra.
Right.
They or Osiris, I guess, depending on who you're talking to. But they no, he was the god of light. Anyways, it doesn't matter, we're not talking about that
Maybe Yondu.
Yondu, that was the guy. But yeah, it's all for farmers essentially. So like,
Is that what it is?
that's pretty
I
much
thought
all
it was so we could be like, today I get to, instead of going to work early, I get to sleep in. I thought that's what, like, wasn't it Kennedy that did it? He like initiated it. He was like, look, we're gonna take away an hour or give you an hour so that you can sleep in. Or
I think it's
I still don't really get it. Like, I still don't get it. I still don't really like why. Like, how is it even possible to just go? You know what? Let's move time.
well,
Like,
there's
is that
a
we lost an hour? Did you ever do the clock change and they go, holy shit? Everybody does it. Everybody goes, holy shit, I lost an hour, and then you're all jacked up for like a day because you lost that hour.
the when I was a volunteer firefighter, I would sometimes occasionally, by the way, welcome to the chat, Megabit Banshee. If you guys haven't already, hit the thumbs up or the thumbs down, do something or whatever. And it doesn't matter what you do as long as you do it. But when I was a volunteer firefighter, I would go and I would just fill out a form, and I would punch in and punch out. And whenever it was daylight savings time, if it was one where we lost an hour, or I'm sorry, if we gained an hour, whatever, where it went back, and I would end up working more hours for less pay, because it was like $3 an hour is what I would get.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah, it was, but I mean, which is great because it was a volunteer thing. So I'm like, I didn't expect to be paid anything, but at the same time, when you're out doing stuff, all of a sudden $3 an hour sucks. But the firefighting is the greatest job in the world until there's a fire, and then you're like, what the fuck did I sign up for? But they like I would basically work an extra hour for no extra pay. And the other guys were like, oh, that's not a big deal because we'll work on a day where or it'll pay itself back over time,
Like balance out, basically.
yeah. I'm like, but not for me. I was like, because I don't necessarily work on that day. Like, maybe I won't come back. Maybe I will because I feel cheated. But that doesn't necessarily apply to me. So anyways, I agree with you. I think it's stupid to take away an hour here just to add it on later here. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But whatever.
Yeah,
Once you think about it as like from the farming community, you're like, oh, okay, I get it, because the farmers fucking feed us and give us milk and whatnot.
Sure. They do.
Whatever you needed to do.
Yeah, what's fucking I don't get it. I still don't get it. It confuses the shit out of me. A lot of stuff pertaining to time still confuses the shit out of me. I definitely don't get like the like why, how is it that we measure time by like moon and sun? Like, who came up with that? Like, who's just like, you know what, this is how we'll know, is because day turns into night. But like
do you think it was because it was like the only consistent thing?
Like, maybe, I don't know, like that. I guess that makes sense. I don't know. I guess I always think like, why not just measure it based on like, I don't know, like it fucks up my head, dude, because then I start thinking about how like, well, is that how I determine how old I am too? Is by like the years, like the amount of cycles of the sun. Like, I'm whatever 30,
Yes.
my late 30s. I'm in my late 30s because the sun tells me so. Like,
yeah.
How is that fucking?
Well, the alternative is to lop off one of your legs and then count the rings.
Oh yeah,
that's the other alternative. But you can only do that twice. So
how is that something for trees too? Like, who came up with that? Like, that's how you can tell how many years they've been around.
I don't. Somebody was watching for a long time, watching this one tree for a long time. He's like, cut it down, and we'll see how old this tree was, because I've been watching it for 80 years, and there better be 80 rings in there, and we'll judge it based off of that. Do you think like before they realized that, like when they were trying to determine what was a consistent measurement of time, was they did like they were like, well, let's see how like every day this bird comes and lands right here on this thing, so like that'll be noon, and then and then they'll be like, what?
Yeah, like that's
that'll
what
be
I'm
what
saying. Like, who came up with this? Like, where did it even come from, and like, why? Like, why do we go like to that? Like, and like, whoever it was back in the day that was like, check this out. The sun is like this at this point in time, and we're gonna call that noon, like you
At
said,
this
right?
point of what?
This point in time. Yeah. And they go, what? Like, what is time? Like, what?
Well, that's what I'm trying to
Or
tell you.
here's something interesting. What about the sands of time, right? That thing that you flip over and like the sand goes to that somehow like measures time, right?
I wonder if they just flipped that over like 12 times and they were like, okay, it's nighttime now. It's night whatever now.
Like, and then like here's what's even weirder is like counting time, like 1 second, 2 second. Like, how was that? Who decided that a second is a second? Who decided that shit, dude?
I don't know. Somebody who was
I'm
like
asking.
really good at ask Siri, I guess.
It's like, fuck, I don't know.
The
Siri.
no, it was one of the gods of Olympus. No, it was one of the titans of Olympus. It was Kronos. He was the guy.
Yeah.
That's the guy we got to talk to. But he no, I think like somebody was just like you know, just like really good at math, and they were like, well, I'm just gonna count out loud. And you guys just tell me how many times I count. And then they're like, well, there are 24 of those in an hour in a day. In a what?
When they came up with numbers, they were just like, we can use this to measure time too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, you know.
Well, we might as well. We spent all this we spend all this time. This what?
But like, here's what's weird about it too. Like, you know how they say that a second is you going 1/1000. Who came up with that, dude? Like,
Somebody who's good
like
at math.
who said a second isn't actually just you going one. There's like a time frame. There's a time frame that
Oh,
is
you
an
know
actual.
what? King Cracker actually has the answer
Okay, let's go.
in the
Let's just
chat to King Cracker. See, he says that
grasping at straws.
yeah,
over here.
the division of the okay, we're over here struggling trying to figure out who came up with whatever. The division of the hour into 60 minutes and of a minute into 60 seconds comes from the Babylonians who used a sexagesimal counting in 60s.
Get some more. Huh?
And then the system for mathematics and astronomy, they derived their number system from the Sumerians who were using it as early as 3500 BC. So there's our answer.
Nope. Back then, they were the ones that were like, "All right, check this out. This is a second. You go 1/1000 or 2 Mississippi."
To what?
That's how you know it's been a second. Who came up with that shit? Dude? A second? Like, how come a second isn't just you going one? You know what I mean? Like, 1 second.
You know, because like some people were too fast, and
It's
some
weird.
people were like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, it's my birthday. You know, because they were waiting for their birthday party or
Oh,
Christmas
yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, and back then they didn't probably have anything else going on. They were probably like, "Do you guys want to sit around and count?" And they're like, "And do what?" All this. Can you imagine like all these things they were trying to invent, and they're like looking back, were like all these things that we take for granted, and they were like, "Hey, I'm trying to do this thing. You want to help me?" Okay. Well, what are you gonna do? I'm just gonna say stuff. Just bear with me. Keep track of the
Like,
things
what
that I
are
say.
you doing? You're trying to explain to them, and they have no idea either.
Just make a little line on the wall for me real quick every time I do a thing. Okay. So that's counting. All right. So he's like, this guy had to like in succession like invent like a bunch of stuff just so he could tell people, all right, now I'm going to tell you how long a day is. All right. A what? You know,
What?
the thing.
A day? No one knows what a day is. And they go, okay, I'm gonna count. And they go, what? You're gonna do what? What is that?
When the great God of the above us rises in the west or in the east, in the what? Fuck it.
that?
Cardinal directions. That way is east. Cardinal what? But no, that's just like a series of things that we could do. We
All
could
these
go on
things you
forever.
Like,
That poor guy, he was like just going nuts trying to tell his friends how to stop being stupid and banging rocks together. Hey, I'm trying to do something here. Listen. So let's talk about you know, we didn't really do anything there, but we'll come around to, I mean, we had fun, and I think that's really what matters. Let's talk about like time travel movies or documentaries, right? Let's do that. So V and I are going to do a game. I'm going to let everybody in on it, and I'll leave it on me because if I turn it to V, you won't know if he's laughing or whatever. You just have to listen.
Yeah.
So here's the game. All right. We're gonna say we have. Do you have your thing pulled up, V?
I got it. Yeah.
We're gonna do a thing where we read off this list of time travel movies, and we're gonna try to get each other to laugh when we say them. Okay, we're gonna alternate between the two. So if you hear V laughing, say it in the chat. Tell on him. Tell on V. Do you want me to go first with
Yeah, you go first.
Danny Darko?
Ferret Day. Go.
Anna Stellar?
Planet of the Chimpanzees.
Dr. Strong?
Safety not. I don't know. I can't think of one for that. Safety not guaranteed. I never heard of that. Oh, is that the one with your boy? What's his name?
I think it's actually based on the story of that guy who posted a want ad saying, yeah. I don't remember who was in it. He's like, bring your weapon with you, because safety is not guaranteed.
Okay.
Is it my turn?
Yeah. Some of these are tough to like with alternate titles. This one that you're on right now has like a bigger title.
Oh, it does. Yeah. Edge of Tomorrow, wash, rinse, and repeat.
Pooper. What's the best I could do for that one?
This is a pretty good one.
Pooper with Joe Gordon-Levitt.
This one isn't and Bruce Willis. You know, I watched the Between Two Ferns with Bruce Willis last night.
Betwixt Two Ferns.
Where
he just like mean mugs him the whole time.
Yeah, I was watching a bunch of them.
Beat his ass.
And when he beat what's his name, Justin Bieber, with his belt. That was a pretty good one.
That was great.
There's nothing for this one. Arrival, which isn't even really like a time travel movie, I don't think. But go ahead.
Star Ben Affleck. Is this was that a time travel movie?
The new
Star
one.
Trek, was it?
Yeah, apparently. Well, the new trilogy.
The Wrath of these nuts.
Nice. Then we got, this one's a trilogy. 13 going on 30, 14 going on 31, and 15 going on 32.
16 going on 60. That would make more sense to me. Yeah.
Your turn.
And yes. This is a tough one too. How about Morse code? Morse code, I guess. That's the best I can do. That's all I got.
I'll take it. That one's a pretty. I remember like. Well, I don't want to spoil it.
Was he time traveling in that?
I don't remember. No, I think it was like repeating the same day. Some of these time travel movies, like what I did was I looked up time travel movies, and there were a bunch of lists of like top 15 best time travel movies, and some of them I think were probably a little more generous than others. And so like Groundhog Day, or I'm sorry, Ferret Day. I liked Grandma's Day was what I was going to use if that was my turn.
Yeah.
X-Men Days of Furniture Past.
Predestined maybe.
Is that what's her face? Hot ass Sandra Bullock.
Oh yeah, I
do
like her. Her fine ass.
You know she's like 60, right?
Yeah, I'd still give her the business.
Me too. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
I was thinking Bill and Ted's Excrement Adventure.
That one's better.
Primer. I don't know. I've never heard of that one.
That's actually a good movie too. I watched that one.
Primer.
It's like a little indie film. The final countdown. Or
if I had gotten one, I would have done the same thing that you just did right now. Oh man, Men in Black books, Men in Men in tight, Men in Black tights.
Robin Hood Men in Black.
I was
uh,
trying to think racist, but I couldn't come up with anything.
of course, we would go to a racist place naturally. All right, I think we'll move on from that.
All
But we'll continue to read down the list. Did you want to read down the list of
But
the rest of them that I have listed there?
well, the second tier,
Yeah, if you want to read down that one.
Back to the Future 1, Back to the Future 2, Back to the Future 3.
Who could forget? The Terminator 1, the Terminator 2, Judgment Day, the Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, the Terminator 4, Salvation, the Terminator 5, Genesis, and that's it for the Terminator movies. There were no other ones. There are no other Terminator movies after.
I think the last one is not being. What about 12 Monkeys and 13 Monkeys and 14? I'm pretty sure everybody else is pretty tuned out. They're like, these assholes.
You know what? And what's terrible is I wrote these jokes, the ones with the reading everyone individually, and they're still so funny to me.
The Star Trek one's first contact, second contact, and then
the first draft of this joke right here, the Star Trek one, was Star Trek First Contact. There's no second contact for anyone who's not a Star Trek fan. And then it was going to be the Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, then Star Trek 5, The Voyage to Work, and then Star Trek 6, The Voyage Back Home Again. Ad infinitum.
Yeah.
And then you can do this one, because this one I'm probably gonna I'd laugh if I was trying to do it. You got to read through the rest of them.
The Time Traveler's Wife, Hot Tub Time Machine, Dance Club Time Machine, Bathtub Time Machine, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, The Time Machine, Time Bandits, About Time, is that a movie? Time After Time, Time Crimes, Spider-Man, Time to Go Home, Avengers Endgame, Avengers Pregame, Avengers Game Changer, Avengers Game of Thrones.
Oh man, oh, that played out like as funny as I thought it would. Oh, for me, I hope other people are laughing, because I was over here trying to hold it together for you. If I would have read that, I would have lost it, because it just says time too many times. Too many what?
Time what?
All right. So what
Song. Adventures of Lyle Swan.
Time after time. So what are your thoughts on that, V? What's your favorite time travel movie?
Favorite time travel movie? Oh, let's see. I don't know. That's a tough one. Maybe Back to the Future. Probably Back to the Future, because there's like a lot of topics that we can discuss about that one.
And
like the weird stuff. Like the weird, the unaddressed, like Freudian, like banging his mom possibly.
Yeah, the Oedipus paradox.
That where like if he had accidentally banged his mom when he saw the picture of himself, instead of disappearing, he has like 6 fingers.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about Back to the Future. I would say my favorite from this list is actually the Live, Die, Watch, and Repeat. Mine is that one, because I really like that movie.
Really?
Yeah,
it is a good movie.
I back in the day when it was on HBO or Cinemax or whatever it was, we had those channels, and anytime it was on, I'd be flipping through the channels, and my wife would see me flipping, and as soon as I got to HBO and it would show Edge of Tomorrow on, she would look over from the other couch, because she knew I was gonna hit okay. And like I would wait, I would hover on it, I'm like, I've already watched it twice today, like do I need to watch it again? It was that and The Heat. Those were the two that I was always watching, like at that time. Anyway,
that's a good one too.
Yeah, like I'm a big fan of well, I mean, we just talked about Sandra Bullock.
Melissa McCarthy.
Yeah, they were really funny in that movie.
She's super underutilized. I don't know, it's off topic, but Melissa McCarthy, I feel bad for her because she's, fat or whatever.
Mm.
And I don't feel bad for her because she's fat. I just feel bad because she's actually really funny and she's actually like a decent actress, but she's just underutilized because she's typecast. Like she's forever gonna be the funny fat girl like in movies because she's fat.
Yeah.
Is that messed up for
No,
saying
I
that?
agree, and it's unfortunate because women. I mean, if you look at it this way, like look at Chris Farley. He was obviously morbidly obese. John Goodman was another one. I mean, these were
Yeah.
like dude actors who were super fat and were playing in roles. Not necessarily Chris Farley. He was always like the befuddling, goofy
Yeah.
guy or whatever. But John Goodman, morbidly obese for like a lot of his life, and
Yeah.
he was always using these serious roles, funny roles, horror. I mean, like he's been in everything, and we
Yeah,
all
he's
respect him as an
he's a good
actor.
Yeah.
And I don't think
Coen Brothers'
anyone
favorite.
who.
I said Cohen brothers' favorite.
Oh yeah, yeah. The Bible salesman, the
A lot of-
Walter, the
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean like he was just a great actor, but he was super fat. And
Yeah.
Melissa McCarthy, I don't know. I like have I ever seen her in anything serious? I don't think so.
No.
But I think like everybody recognizes her as being this super funny fat chick. So she may have like been roped into this whole Chris Farley
Yeah.
situation or whatever. I don't know, but that's based off of like, didn't she come from SNL? Like that's where she
Did she?
started.
I don't know. Not much good comes from SNL these days, to be honest. So
No.
I wouldn't be surprised. But
Um,
so where were we
we
going
were
with
talking about we were talking about Back to the Future. That's
Oh
what
yeah,
that's
yeah,
what this
yeah.
whole thing is.
I guess
I'm
that's
gonna-
really the main topic, huh?
Yeah.
Back to the Future.
Maybe
Yeah,
try
I
to
think
have
I
me,
think
like,
there's
drugs
some
in my
weird
pockets or whatever.
implications in that movie. And we've discussed this. This is something that like we've discussed a lot, and I think it's cool that we finally get to discuss it on air about like our theories about the movie, all the weird theories and things that we go, oh, that couldn't have been right. Like here's an interesting one that I was reading. There's a theory that Doc Brown like killed Marty McFly because he created like multiple timelines. And so to like fix the timeline, he had to kill one Marty McFly. Have you read this?
Nuh-uh.
Let me see if I can find it. Basically, what it was saying is like Marty McFly created like a second timeline when he um, got his parents together or whatever, right?
Yeah. Huh?
Okay, here's the theory. Um, they might it's this absurd fan theories that they might be true, right? But the one is that like okay, Marty McFly actually it's Back to the Future too, but Doc Brown travels back in time to save him. The theory here goes that Doc accidentally altered the space-time continuum, facilitating an alternate future in which Marty is killed in the tunnel while attempting to steal the sports almanac from him. Remember that scene when he's on the hoverboard? Learning
Yeah.
of the fateful consequences, Doc gets there just in time to throw Marty a line to save him from colliding with Biff's car. How else would have Doc known to show up at the exact right place and time if not for some future revelation? That is kind of weird, but that's not the one that I had read. There was a different one that like he was actually dead. Okay, here's another one. It says the trilogy is a metaphor for sexual reproduction. So there's very little rhyme or reason as to why Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, who wrote the screenplays, would make a movie that served as a metaphor for reproduction. But many fans have noticed that even if only coincidentally, the entire narrative has much in common with a birth narrative. The flux capacitor looks not entirely unlike a pair of ovaries
It does.
and
There's no denying that.
fallopian tubes connected to the uterus. The time machine requires that a man or dog enter it in order to begin the process. And the events cooked up throughout the course of time travel yield or birth different versions of people in the future. To cap this one off, the process is supervised by Dr. Doc Brown.
Huh.
That's weird, huh?
You know what's funny is like Rick and Morty. You can see like there are a lot of parallels between Rick and Morty and Doc and Marty, right?
Yeah.
Did you know
Yeah,
that originally, like, it was those two guys? Well, I think Justin Roiland or whatever. He originally made a cartoon called Doc and Marty, and it was just like a super obscene version of Back to the Future, which later became Rick and Morty. So, I think our argument was what? Like, we had discussed that Biff was actually the good guy, right?
Yeah.
We were trying to make the case for that because he was trying to prevent the Down syndrome child, Marty, of the normal present, right? And I mean, we can start.
I mean,
I'll take it from jump.
yeah,
Because like, you know, he goes back, and we all know this. This happens in the movie, right? He goes back to 1955, and he's in a car with his mom, and his mom's like falling all over him, trying to hook up with him, and like there are some periods throughout the movie like where we don't know what's going on, right? Like we're not privy to some of that information. Obviously there are days where he's back there for a little while, even he's sleeping in her room in his underwear, right?
Yeah, in his underwear. Yeah.
So there's really no way of knowing whether or not Marty inadvertently, through like blocking his actual old man Crispin Glover out of the way, like if he somehow impregnated his own mother. And we just, because we don't know what happened after the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, right? Did she test positive? Like, did she test positive on a pregnancy test? We don't know, and we don't really know when necessarily. Like, you know, Marty came, like he was what, 18-ish around the time of like 1985. So there's like, it's hard to tell. Now maybe he was a little bit older when he came back. I don't know. Again, there's like a lot of what ifs here. Now, did Marty fuck his own mother? And this is part of the predestination thing, which we can talk about here in a little bit. Like, did he end up banging his own mother? That's why because Marty was a cool guy, right? Like he rode a skateboard. He, you know, he was making out with the hot ass Jennifer. And then like, you know, you think like, you look at Crispin Glover and he's like a total nerd. Like, did a cool guy end up giving birth to a cool guy, or did a nerd end up giving birth to a cool guy who's also like partially retarded? Because,
but I don't understand that. Like the logic, like here's where I have to keep going. I always go, what? Like if he did, like, let's assume that he did bang his mother, like, wouldn't that create an entirely different person? And even if it wouldn't be him, like that to me is like a paradox, right? Because first of all, he only existed because his mom and his dad hooked up. But if his mom didn't hook up with his dad, then he wouldn't exist to impregnate his mom. But if he did impregnate his mom, wouldn't it be a different person that came into existence because it's his, you know, semen?
Well, did we actually see him after? Remember, because he comes back after his like original Marty self like speeds off in the DeLorean. Like he shows up at the Twin Pines Mall. So we never really get a good look at Marty. You know what I mean? Like when he comes back, maybe he's like all a little bit older, maybe he's a little more messed up, I don't know. But then like that's him again. So it's him regardless, no matter what. Even if he was the one who went back in time and banged his mom and was birthed, that was him. So no matter what, it's going to be him. And whether it's like, and then we create like a time loop, right?
Yeah.
Where he keeps like coming back as like somewhat retarded. Oh, hey, welcome. Let's Fish already. I'm glad you can finally show up. He's actually a big fan on the Instagram, and he's very supportive on the Instagram. Want to put that out there.
Nice.
That he's a big supporter. Has been for quite a while. And yes, Jay Coop, we are making the case that Marty is an incest baby of his
himself.
own.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah, he's his own incest baby.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
It's like he impregnated his mom to give birth to himself.
Yes.
That to me, that's like some other dimensional shit. It's like, remember we always talk about The One, you know, where Jet Li goes throughout all these different dimensions and then beats his own ass so that he can, like, you know, become the one. Like, what would happen if you impregnated your mom, like, before you existed?
You
like
would.
That to me is like a conundrum.
You end up with cerebral palsy or whatever it is. That's what happens.
Cerebral.
Right? Or no, Parkinson's. I'm sorry.
Probably
he has Parkinson's.
not in good
he has
taste
Parkinson's.
to laugh about cerebral.
It's Parkinson's. You can laugh at Parkinson's. No,
it is.
That's
Parkinson's.
what it was. That's I was trying to think of what Michael J.
I just
Fox
finally
has.
got that. I forgot he did, so it's probably happened to him. Yeah,
I'm telling you. And then plus we were talking too about, didn't we talk about? Well, we'll get to that in just a moment. But that's the whole idea, is that Marty went back, and then Doc has to. He's trying to like interfere because he knows what happens, right? Like he knows that Marty is kind of an idiot. Like just as soon as he sees him, he's like, "Don't fuck your mom." Like that's the first thing he tells him. He's like, "Don't meet up with your old, or don't mess up anything." He's like, "Don't interfere with your dad."
Isn't it kind of weird? Like, why is that never addressed? That like Marty hangs out with this old guy. Like, why isn't that kind of weird? Like,
it is. But
He's like
that's
this
isn't
high
that
school
kind of the
student,
thing that like a slow person would do, right? You know what I mean?
like gravitates towards him because he's a doctor. Well, yeah, I guess in terms of your case, he is a doctor. Well, let's assume he is. They call him doc. I guess that doesn't make him a doctor.
Well, what if he's
But
like a psychologist, right? And that's like, and this is all just like some kind of fever dream of the retarded
yeah,
Marty.
like a psycho
Retardy. Like, what if this is all just like something
retardy.
like he's in like a straitjacket or whatever, and he's telling the story to this Doc Brown fellow whose name is actually Dr. Brownenstein, and like he's like actually like a real like psychologist or whatever, and he's like, tell me more about this time that you went back in time, in what? And tell me more about this thing that you did or whatever, Marty. Talk, and it's like a retarded Marty or whatever who's like absolutely banana shit crazy, like yeah, and he's just like and he's like, this is all just like some kind of dream that Marty's having, or like this vision or whatever that crazy insane Marty McFly is having. Anyway, that's another possibility. But I think like our argument was that Biff was trying to stop it. Yeah, he was trying to stop it because he knew. He's like, somehow he is also a time cop. Because remember, in the second one, Biff comes back and he tells young Biff, cool Biff, you know, hey, there's going to be this crazy doctor and a wild-eyed kid who's going to come and try to steal this book. But like, it's after the door closes, right? So you don't hear what else happens. He's also going to be like, and also he's going to try to fuck Lorraine, and you need to stop that because he is the product of that. So don't.
It's hard to like. I agree with you in theory, but it's hard to like side with Biff because he did try to like rape. He did try to like rape her at one point. You know, that's kind of.
Did he? Oh yeah, in the car.
Yeah, he was gonna rape her.
Remember when he was like, Biff comes out and he's like openly racist to that band or whatever? Remember?
Really?
Like nobody talks about that. He's like, "What are you spooks looking at?" And then they're like, all of a sudden, and then you like the other black guys come out of the van. They're like, "What'd you say?" And then all of a sudden he's like, "Whoa," But like Biff is like openly racist, a rapist. Like it's very very hard to defend Biff, but at the same time, like you got to remember, old Biff comes back and tells young Biff, "Hey, this is what's going to happen." And Biff is like a by any means necessary type guy, right?
He actually pulled the looper where he goes back and kicks his own ass because he sees himself as a kid, and then like, it's make like a tree and leave.
You sound like a damn fool when you say it wrong.
Yeah,
Biff.
I don't know.
I like that theory. I think there's more to Back to the Future than, I encourage people right now, if you haven't, and I know you do because we're in quarantine, if you watch Netflix because it's on Netflix right now, and you should watch Back to the Future and try to at least imagine. Let's do like a hermeneutics experiment here, where we like imagine that were the case, that Marty is the product of his own incestual relationship with his mother. Can you make that case based on what you see in the Back to the Future trilogy? Can you make that case? Can you help me make that case? I guess
is he a little retarded when you watch it? You go, I guess that was a pretty stupid thing to do as a person. Yeah. He's out there skitching. He gets in the beginning and he like knows there's this giant speaker and like turns it all the way up. Like what the fuck? Like how would you not think that's not a good thing to do? Turn it all the way, a gigantic speaker, and then of course, it inevitably sends him flying across, which we all enjoyed. Like, there's no doubt about it. We all enjoyed that scene.
And then let's not forget that in Back to the Future 2, his own son, with Jennifer's hot contribution to that DNA coupling, and like she's like a smart chick, like she's got a good head on her shoulders. They still produce this idiot baby who ends up like not being able to wear a jacket.
Yeah,
and like his shoes are all jacked up. Like he's clearly mentally deficient, right?
Yeah.
And so
son, like I agree with you there. The son is definitely kind of dumb. He's clearly kind of stupid. I don't know if that's how old I was gonna say Crazy Legs Michael J. Fox. I was trying to think of a good Parkinson's joke.
Crazy
what do you call it? Harlem Shakes.
It took me a minute to realize who you were talking about. I was like, Crazy Legs, who? What? And then all of a sudden you said Michael, and I realized, and that's when I lost. I'm glad I wasn't drinking my alcohol when you said that, because that would have been disastrous. But no, I agree with you. That's and that's how you
Didn't
end
you have
up
a
with
daughter too?
Parkinson's.
You had a daughter too, right? Did they ever show
In
the
the
daughter
movie? I don't remember.
in the movie? What about Back to the Future 3, where he actually goes like to
I'm
the
gonna be
past?
honest. I don't care much for the third, and I don't.
Really?
I don't care who. I'm gonna say it out loud right now. I don't. I pretty much acknowledge that it's Back to the Future 1, and then Back to the Future 2, and then that's it. Because 3, I can do
I
with
liked
or
Mad
without.
Dog 10 though, and I
Yeah,
like
he's
that
pretty cool.
scene when he shoots at in the when they're at the dance with the ZZ Top, and he shoots at Doc Brown, and he like goes to pull his coat, and his hat goes flying. It goes like straight up, like when you shoot someone's hat off, it goes straight up for some reason.
Well, that's
It's like,
the guy who directed that movie, right? Robert Zemeckis, is that his name?
yeah,
He
no,
also
wasn't it Spielberg?
no, he's
It
a
was,
producer,
I
but
thought Zemeckis
nope,
just wrote it.
he's the director. He also directed Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So I mean, you gotta like if you and it came out around the same period ish, like the early '90s, late '80s. That was like the same time, right? So I mean, like it was the same sort of like slapsticky type
Yeah.
family comedy type stuff.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
lot of similarities between Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Back to the Future. It's you could see a lot of the film style actually. It's noir. It's kind of noir, I guess you could say, the low key lighting. That's my film nerd coming out of you.
Well, those are. I mean, no, it's a good word to know or whatever. Yeah, but you can like if you watch them and you're like, if you didn't know any better, you could be like, man, this seems like the same friggin' guy. What
Yeah.
like it was responsible for
Well,
these
you know,
two
come to think of it, there's a
things.
scene. Okay, if you watch the scene like comparatively, right? If you watch the scene when what's his name, Eddie Valiant is riding around in that cartoon taxi car with
Benny,
hot ass,
Benny
yeah,
is
hot
the
ass,
name.
yeah, Benny and hot ass Jessica Rabbit when they're riding around at night. Compare that scene to the scene when Biff is chasing what's his head with the car in the Back to the Future, and he's got the hoverboard.
Yeah,
Remember
yeah,
when he's trying to
yeah.
compare
Well,
those two scenes? They'll look exactly the same.
and you know what's funny is
The
like
lighting and everything.
Roger
Probably the
Rabbit
same.
took place in what the was it the 20s? I want to say it was the 20s, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know.
And then Back to the Future was in the 50s. So I mean, like you're talking about a guy
No, it
who
had to be the 50s.
you think
That,
so?
yeah, I'm pretty sure. Now I have to
Maybe.
Google it. I'm pretty sure Who Framed Roger Rabbit took place in the 50s.
Okay.
Let me.
Well,
I'll look.
I believe you, but at the same time, like if that would make my case even greater because that would be a whole lot easier. You'd be a guy. It's like Stephen King who writes books that all take place in the same period of time, right? Like he's always talking about stuff that he's never talking about like really modern times or times before his time. It's always like,
The internet. It says 1947 Hollywood.
oh, perfect. Then that
So
makes
yeah,
my
right,
case for
right
me.
around the same time.
The
Yeah.
guy he uses the same types of vehicles, the same types of
Yeah.
everything, like even the structure. And Robert Zemeckis, he probably grew up in the 1940s, 50s, that time frame. So,
Possibly.
yeah. So that like I was saying, Stephen King is the same way. He writes stuff from his childhood, like when he's writing about kids in a certain time, he can write about that. Or if he's writing about adults, it's more like in the 80s and 70s or
Yeah.
whatever. And he doesn't write about anything pre his birth, and he doesn't write anything really modern. I mean, Cell is something that he wrote that's modern, but it's fucking garbage. Anyways, like most of his work,
Plus,
frankly.
plus he probably bangs kids.
Well, we know that. Like, there's no denying that. You know what's funny too is Stephen King. He's obviously very outspoken against Trump, and
Yeah.
most of the people that you see who are very outspoken against Trump, if you just look even at a casual glance at some of the circles that they're in, like they're mostly pedophiles, and they're like people who are afraid that they're going to be outed as these terrible people. And you look at him, for instance, you look at certain politicians, you look at people who are like crooked, and those are the people who just at a glance you're like, oh, that guy's crooked, or that guy's a kitty fucker. Like those are the guys who are very outspoken. And now that makes me concerned about I'm a big fan of Tim and Eric's shows. Like as comedians, I think they're very funny, but and as content creators, I think they're very funny. But Tim is very, very outspoken against Trump, which it's his thing. Like everyone's
Yeah.
entitled to their opinion, but at the same time, like ease off. Like let's be funny. Like I want to see you being funny. I don't want to see you the political commentator or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't come to you for your political commentary.
Right.
But it makes me wonder, what is Tim Heidecker hiding? Whereas like Eric Warheim, right? He's and Tim Heidecker, by the way, was a huge Bush supporter, and he was very against Obama, like throughout that throughout previous years. And then all of a sudden Trump comes along, and Tim Heidecker fucking hates him. And Eric Warheim, meanwhile, is a very outspoken liberal, but he keeps it to himself because he's like, well, whatever, you know, hey, I'm very pro gay rights, I'm pro this, I'm pro that, like all these liberal talking points. But at the same time, he's not like out there huffing and puffing about the political environment right now, even, which is like the time for people who are like pro gay rights or whatever. But he's very like cool about it. He's like, hey, whatever, you know, I'm here to make a show called Beef House and make people laugh or whatever, which is cool. I respect that, even knowing that he's like a very outspoken liberal. But that's what makes me concerned about Eric or Tim Heidecker. I'm like, I wonder what he's hiding. Like, is he a kitty diddler? Maybe. Like, and so that's, as soon as you see somebody very outspoken against Trump, here's a fun game to play. Look them up, just type their name and type conspiracy and find out what people are saying about them. I
think it's interesting though, like the just because the topic that you raised right now, you know, like I think, and this is my probably unpopular opinion, but I think like kid diddlers, as you call them, I think they're pretty easy to spot, to be honest. And I think, like, in the back of our head, we don't like to judge people like that. But you can see somebody on the street and, like, instantly go, that person is a weirdo. And, like, because we've been trained to, like, not be so judgmental of people, we go, probably not. I'm just probably being judgmental. But I think, like, and I like to think that, like, I'm quick to judge people, but I'm usually, like, spot on. And, like, when you see somebody and, like, your instant, like, reaction is, like, this guy is probably banging kids, I'm going to go ahead and say he's probably banging kids because that's your instinct telling you this kid is banging kids. And like, it's so funny because when you see people like, okay, take for example, like people that do, like, do you ever think like, why would you choose the profession to like be around kids all the time? Like, you know, like maybe you're this, like you dress up in a purple dinosaur suit and you're like doing a show with all these little kids. Like, who really wants to be around little kids that much? Like, like really, really. And so like you have to kind of consider that. And like, you know, that was something funny about the guy that played Barney. Like, he ended up being not a pedophile, but he was like what's it called? An illegal. He was like an illegal alien. Yeah, and they took his green card. He didn't have a green card, and when they found that out, he got like deported. Like, dude, like that's
imagine deporting a dinosaur. You're in the wrong time period. You belong in the Cretaceous, sir.
That's what happened to Barney. He got deported. But I'm saying, like, that's my point. Is like, I think we try not to put stigmas on people. And, you know, I'm always like, I'm of the mind that like we should shame people and constantly put stigmas on people because it'll make us more vigilant, you know? And I'm not saying we should be like the Gestapo and go, you're a faggot, you're going to whatever. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, if you have like a suspicion about somebody, like, what's the harm in like
putting an ear to the ground and like,
putting an ear to the ground. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Just go, look, man, nobody, I think it's safe to say that nobody in this podcast or listening to this podcast is okay with kitty diddlers. If you're okay with adults banging children, then probably this podcast isn't for you, because we're not okay with that. And if it's something you're not okay with as well, then I think it would be easy to say that you probably would do something about that if you knew somebody was doing that.
Oh, no doubt. You know what's funny is you say this, and by the way, to the let me say this: I'm getting my I'm applying. I'm not necessarily going to get it. I doubt that I'll actually get it, but I'm applying for my private investigator's license.
And, you're saying,
and and that's going to be like a big part of it, is like going after people who are like I'm more interested in like stopping people who are actual criminals. I can give a fuck about like, you know, whatever bullshit laws that I disagree with necessarily, but like the ones that, you know, like the ones that affect people, you know, that sort of shit. So I would love to be a part of that human trafficking, getting rid of those people, right? And that's the sort of thing that I'm into. And anyways, here's to me hopefully getting approved for for my private investigator's license.
So you can become a dick, even though you already are one.
Yeah, be a legal dick. legally a dick. But no, you say that, and you say, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually read something today about a guy. Excuse me, about a guy who, gosh, where was it?
You all right there, boss?
I got the hiccups now. It's that
I heard it
habanero.
come up.
By the
There
way,
was one time where I could hear it come up, so I know.
Old Smoky Tennessee habanero and mango whiskey. No, it's the hiccups. They you know, I like my stuff spicy.
Yeah.
You know, I like my Latin women. No, there was a guy who was looking for a home, and I don't remember where. I want to say it was Oregon or Washington. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I know some of you guys in the chat have shared it, and that's where I saw it. There was a guy who was looking for a house in a neighborhood, and he looked up, he was looking to see if there were any sex predators in the area, because that's what you do when you're buying a house. You look to make sure that there's no, especially if you've got little kids, you look to make sure there's no sex predators in there. And he found one, and he just was driving by, and he saw the dude out there with like a rag, and he was wiping his car. And by the way, this is all stuff that he wrote in his confession letter, which was like a comment to, I guess, like somebody posted that, you know, hey, we're looking for leads in the case of this person's murder or whatever. And he like replied on Facebook, yeah, it was me. And like he writes out this confession letter, and he says,
arrogant,
he says,
huh?
Well, yeah. Well, he was like, you know, well, no, not yet. You'll hear when he gets arrogant. He said, I saw this guy out there wiping the car down with a rag, not even like a wet car or soap or anything, but he was watching a crowd of kids in his neighborhood. And he said, so he drove by, and he drove by again. He was still doing it. And he knew that the guy had raped like a kid, and some other lady had accused him of raping a kid. She had set up a Facebook page about it. And this dude found all this stuff. So he went and he killed the guy. And like, just because he's like, no, he's like, we can't have this type of guy in the world anymore. We need to get rid of this type of guy. Yeah. And, so he did, he killed him. And then he confessed to it. He's like, yeah, it was me, and this is why I did it. And he's like, I totally would have gotten away with it too if I wouldn't have and confessed to it. And I know that the legal system, which is all jacked up, is going to actually come down harder on me than it did on him, who did like however many months in jail for raping this kid. But I'm willing to take that, you know, I'm willing to risk it all because that guy needed to be dead. And so like he did it. I have a lot of respect for those guys. Is it a crime to murder somebody? Yeah. Should you murder somebody? No. But at the same time, like, should pedophiles only serve like 2 years in prison for, you know, and are those 2 years going to be really hard on that pedophile? Yeah. And if they survive, you know, will they have learned their lesson in jail? Hopefully, based on like the amount of ass kickings and rape and stabbings and shankings and everything that they're going to get while they're in jail, because one thing that criminals hate more than other criminals is pedophiles. And rival gang members is pedophiles. But at the same time, like, do they need to continue to exist? Are they necessarily rehabilitated? Probably not. And clearly not in this case, if this dude was staring at a bunch of kids playing in the neighborhood, and he had like a place in his backyard, like a slide and shit in his backyard with no fence. It was just like a weird situation. But yeah, this dude ended up killing him. And so I have a lot of respect for that guy. If you're going to go out and do it, I'm not going to encourage it, but at the same time, I'm not going to condemn somebody for, you know, murdering a pedophile who's still obviously a pedophile. But yeah, that's like, what was it? Yeah, that's kind of my take on the whole thing. Megabit Banshee said that he thinks Eric Warheim would be more the diddler. He looks like it, but that's the thing. They both
look like kid diddlers to me. Like, that's part of the reason why I've never watched the show, is because I always thought they just look like a couple weirdos to me. It's like, and you've told me about it before, and I could never. Like, their show is called Bedtime Stories.
Well, right. But those are horror. Those are like horror versions of Tim and Eric Awesome Show. Great job. Now, here's my defense because they are very funny, but they're like, and the way that they're framed in some of the stuff that is written about them is that they're anti-comedy. So they're like the goofy kind of Tom Green, like a modern Tom Green type comedy where they're just stupid and you laugh because it's like the stuff that we used to do. I mean, granted, our stuff was like more structured, I think, but like the sort of stuff that we're
highbrow, bro.
But our stuff that we used to do, where we're kind of goofy and stuff. But but they do like real. like awkward comedy,
They
and
call
you
it
can
meta or whatever, right? Meta, isn't that what they say
yeah,
now?
I think that's
It's
a word that's
meta.
used. But they do
I
that,
think
and
that's
they're
a
both
word.
very weird, and they do a lot of like really subtly gay stuff, like where they'll kiss
See,
each other
okay,
on the
now let's
lips.
let's talk about this. Like, do you ever watch a Tim and Eric show and go, that was kind of weird, creepy, gay, but you kind of just brush it off
Yeah,
because you don't want to put a stigma on them, like
right.
you've accepted it?
And you know what's funny is I'm like the
See,
vehemently I'm like the vehemently anti-gay, like I'm that guy, the ultra conservative
yeah,
Bible thumping guy,
yeah,
like
yeah.
no, but like at the same time I'm like, Tim and Eric, they're kissing each other on the lips, whatever.
Gay.
But and that's what's funny though, they do this sort of silly stuff, and I think it's funny, and I don't know that you would necessarily find it all funny because it's not highbrow. It's very, very lowbrow. And like that sort of stuff is just like fun for me to just pass the time, I
I'll
guess.
say this: the moment two dudes kiss each other, my channel the channel gets changed, bro.
I don't
That's it.
watch I don't
I'm
watch
not
that
watching
stuff
that.
around my kids, but like on my own, like I'll laugh, I'll chuckle or whatever, be like, oh, these knuckleheads or whatever. And like to be honest, like the only people I'll watch do gay stuff is Tim and Eric and Roger.
Listen to yourself, man.
No, I'm defending my choice. And Roger from American Dad. Like those are the
Yeah.
only people that I'll allow like gay stuff. Anything other than that, I'm like, come on.
You
But
remember
like,
that episode of Workaholics, The Lord's Force? Do you remember that one?
yeah.
You watched the whole like when I saw that episode, I was so like utterly disgusted. I was like, guys, come on, like this is what you're doing now. Like it was so unbelievably gay, and I felt so like disgusted because that show is so good. Like it's such a funny show, but then they did this like super gay episode.
But
And it
what
was
did
like,
they do with it? They didn't do it like pro gay. They did it like this is still not the norm. Like
It was so
let's
creepy.
distance
They
ourselves
made
away
it creepy.
from
Yeah,
it.
that's true.
You know what I
that's
want to
the
do while we're here, and I'm going to take a second. Since this is the first one that Let's Fish Already has gotten to participate live in, I want you to be as proactive as you can in the chat, and we're going to do our best to include you in the show because we want you. We love having you guys. And some of you guys, and I'm not going to say that we don't appreciate the hell out of you guys showing up every single time. We do.
Right.
But at the same time, let's welcome Let's Fish Already into the chat. And anything that you say, I'm going to make sure that we talk about. But I do also want to give credit to Mike in Manitoba. If you're still here, Mike, I assume you are. That assignment that you watched the video of, I actually got 200 points out of 200 points on it. I know you asked about that earlier, and the professor was fucking blown away. Mike in Manitoba actually watched this homework assignment that I did for my school for seminary, and he commented on it and liked the video and all sorts of stuff. And like it made me look way cooler in front of all the other people who showed up in the in the chat that I shared it to. And I'm sure the professor, when he saw it, I went way over time, which I normally do. But Mike in Manitoba was in there, and he like commented on it, like, "Hey, great topic. I'd love to see the next one. You know, great topic, Tom. I said a prayer for everybody who was affected by because I talked about atonement and how to make right with Christ after a life in the occult was the topic of the presentation, and Mike was in the chat talking about it, and he was not in the chat but in the comments or whatever, and then he liked the video and everything. So Mike, I want to say that I appreciate it, but let's fish already. Anything that you say we're going to talk about because you're here. We appreciate the hell out of you for coming. He said, let's not forget about Quentin Tarantino's kitty foot picture from a long while back.
Yeah.
So this dude, V, I know you were laughing a little bit ago about saying maybe we'll break 20 this time. Yeah. And I was going to say something to you that most of our views come from later on because we do have a big overseas audience and they don't get to catch the night show. So, or catch us live. So we do end up averaging, and it's not huge, but again, we still end up with like 150 some views typically per episode. And we do well in analytics for keeping people in the video or whatever. So people who come do watch our show. And I know Let's Fish Already is one of them. And I did want to encourage you because I know you're like on the verge of like leaving the show because you hate my guts and everything. But no, but that's one thing that I did want to say to you is a lot of our people do come later on and catch the replay. And while you're here though, Let's Fish already. You know, God bless you for coming. And we do want to talk about
Mr. Tachanka, aka a Target. Isn't that the same person, Mr. Tachanka? It says Tom. I just changed my.
Oh, see this fucking faker. No, after I'm sitting here singing his praises. No, that's it's been a little while since he's been on the show because it's been what, since at least 3-4 episodes back we had Mr. Tachanka. But yeah. Anyways, but that's my case that I'm making for, you know, I know you were picking on us for only having 20 people in the chat at a given time and watching the live show. Yeah, but we do all right on the replay.
He mentioned the Quentin Tarantino's kitty foot pictures where he was making out with that kid's foot. We talked about that before, but as of recently, I've watched a few Quentin Tarantino movies, and he definitely has a foot fetish. Like, watch those movies because there's always a scene where he's shooting some chick's feet. Like, no kidding, dude. Like,
you know what? I saw it too. Pulp Fiction. Remember I was telling you I was watching it the other day? Yeah. And it was Uma Thurman when she's walking. Uma Thurman. Barefoot. And then she puts her foot up kind of like at the fucking, she puts her foot at an angle like this and she's like, all right, let's go. But it's just the feet. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah,
there's a lot. If any one of them with like women in it have women's feet in it. The Kill Bill, man, there's a whole scene where they remember Wiggle of the Big Toe, where they're just shooting her feet the whole time. But at least I'm gonna say 60% of his movies have like a foot scene in it. That's kind of like, what, dude? Where you go, why are we looking at this person's feet for so long?
And
like
a
good 5-minute shot.
You'll never think of it. Really? I mean, you'll think of it like, what is the purpose of this scene? Like maybe in passing, but you'll immediately forget it. But now that you know that Quentin Tarantino has a kitty foot fetish and a foot fetish in general, like now you're like, like now I know why we're looking at Uma Thurman's.
There's one there's one. I don't think did he direct what's the Dusk Till Dawn? He did Dusk Till Dawn, right?
Did he write it, or I think Frankie, or no, not Frankie. Frank
Miller.
No, the Rodriguez fellow.
Robert Rodriguez.
There you go. I was thinking of Frankie.
Another great director. Huge fan of Robert Rodriguez. There's a scene in that movie where Quentin Tarantino has Selma Hayek's foot in his mouth. There's like a foot. I'm not kidding. There's a scene and you go, why did they need this scene? And then you go, oh yeah, because Quentin Tarantino probably wanted Selma Hayek's foot in his mouth.
Now, do you wonder,
I'm not kidding.
If he like went behind, like if you look at the original script, do you think that there's going to be like any kind of shooter script? Like when you look, is it going to say Quentin Tarantino or fucking the Gecko brother? I forget what his name is.
There's like an asterisk.
Yeah, where it's like he takes his foot in his mouth or whatever. Or do you think that's something where he's like, hey man, do you think you could have Selma Hayek put her fucking foot in my mouth? You know, do you think it's something like that?
Impression, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. But do you think it's something like that where he's like, hey, Robert, do you think you could put her foot in my mouth? You know, do you think it's something like that, or do you think it's something that was in the original script where the writer, the intent was like,
well, if he didn't script it, I bet that the ones that he scripts, he definitely puts that in intentionally. But I bet you in movies where he like that one, like Dusk Till Dawn, I bet that was the one where he sat down with Robert and was like, look, dude, what do I got to do to get Selma Hayek's foot in my mouth?
Oh, doesn't he like do the same? Well, he's also, you know what? Dusk Till Dawn, remember? He's trying to fuck the kid. Remember in the movie, like his character is trying to fuck the kid. Remember?
Really?
In the RV.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
No,
the only thing I really remember about that movie was Cheech when he does the pussy sales. He's like, cold pussy, hot pussy. Remember?
He plays like 3 different characters in that movie. No, because he plays the border agent too. But remember he's in the RV in the bathroom with homegirl, and he's trying to fuck the girl, and he's in the hotel, and she's like talking to him, and she's like, hey, I totally want to fuck you. I forget their names. I know they're the Gecko brothers, but like, I totally want to fuck you. And he's like, do what? And he's like really like into this fantasy of fucking this teenager. Remember?
Right.
Like, and that's like that's another call to Quentin Tarantino actually being a pedophile. And you know, he's very big into the Black Lives Matter movement. Remember, he was like everything that was anti-conservative, no matter what it was, even if it was the Black Lives Matter movement, which was the Russian conspiracy.
Concord.
Like that Black Lives Matter was the Russian influence in the 2016 election. And a lot of people don't want to admit that, but that's what it was. And you can look at it. You can look at the data that came from
There's
Robert
documents
Mueller,
that you can read on that one.
But
that is a true thing.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. But yeah, he was part of that. So I mean, like, again, you look at like the people who are vehemently against Donald Trump and things that Donald Trump was trying to do, and the anti-corruption and the draining of the swamp, and the, you know, all the stuff that we want that maybe or maybe not Donald Trump is doing. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and have that argument. Because I think there's a fair amount of swamp that Donald Trump is including in this administration, and I'll admit that on air or whatever for anybody who wants to, you know, attack me for it. But at the same time, like all the stuff that he stood for, that we wanted, that we voted for him to do, was all the stuff that all these like anti-Donald Trump people are, you know, fighting against. They're like, no, we can't have Donald Trump because he's gonna fucking out us as pedophiles. You know, like that's the sort of stuff that that's the sort of stuff that rings in my head again. And a lot of people want to attack me for being a Donald Trump supporter, which again, there's a lot of reasons why why I'm a Donald Trump supporter, and why I will vote for him again in 2020, especially now that we have like Joe Biden against him, which is hilarious.
Sleepy Joe.
But
hey, Jay Coop said, "Who wouldn't lick Salma Hayek's foot?"
Oh, I would in a second.
That brings I gotta address that because I've been thinking about something lately, and like, I mean, doesn't that seem a little unsanitary to you? Like licking a person's feet, like, okay, I mean, yeah, I guess you could wash it or whatever, but and then here's another thing. There are these people out there that they do this thing I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's called rim job, where they lick each other's buttholes. And like I was considering this, I thought that seems a little unsanitary too, actually.
You know,
like I mean, I know like the baby wipes and cleaning your butthole and all.
I'm not going to talk about my personal life or whatever.
Articles,
but I will say that a rim job is something that you do with somebody that you are very comfortable with, and that you trust, and who properly exercises hygienic, or who has proper hygiene etiquette exercises that they do beforehand.
I would say someone that goes over the top with hygiene.
Yeah,
like who? Well, how many? I mean,
no,
how many people do you know like don't just wipe their ass? They like have a ton of baby wipes, and they really get in there to make sure it's just like squeaky clean butthole, which even then, like, there's still particles in there. Like, you're licking a butthole, and like there's the chance. I mean, the fact of the matter is if you lick a butthole, you've got poop in your mouth, no matter how you look at it. No matter how you know
what, V, I'm gonna tell you, like I said, it's a very intimate act. It's one that you do with somebody that you trust. It's not somebody who, and Dane Cook did a bit on this, and when we were in Iraq, as a matter of fact, I don't know if you went to that show, but Dane Cook, when he was there at Spiker, he did
Dane
a bit.
Cook was at Spiker?
He was. Yeah, he was. And I actually went, and I was very I recorded it. I wonder if I still have that recording. Anyways, I recorded it without express written permission from the Dane Cook Enterprise. But no, he did a bit where he said, if a chick goes on a run, he's like, I think eating somebody's ass, and this is back at like the peak, or I'm sorry, at the beginning, like the ground level of ass eating, because now you hear about it all the time.
Yeah.
This is at like ground level ass eating trend. All right, 2008, 2009. He talked about, he's like, I think it's something that you do with somebody that you're specifically with, and not something that you do with somebody that you just met necessarily. He said, it's not something I'll do if my girlfriend goes for a 3-mile run and then comes back and is like, hey, all right. And she lifts up her skirt and expects you to eat her ass. This is not something that you do in that circumstance. He's like, this is something that you clean up for, that you prepare for. Some people even encourage the art or the act of like an enema perhaps beforehand, some real cleanliness or whatever beforehand. Now if you're doing it like right after someone takes a shit, I think there's a problem with that. If you're doing it to a guy who has, and I'll admit this right now on the air, I have a lot of ass hair. I'm a very, like, when I hit puberty, boom, ass hair. That was like the first thing before I got a beard. If you see my beard now, imagine that on my ass. That's pretty much what I'm working with. So I think that's not necessarily like the time to do it. But if you've got a woman who biologically does not necessarily grow hair down there, or perhaps cleans that area up very well, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think if you specifically love somebody enough and you're intimate and you're specific to that person, I think that's something that you absolutely should do as a sign of like, I think that's more, what's the word I'm looking for? I think that's more of
intimate?
An example of commitment than per se a wedding ring. Because I think a wedding ring oftentimes just is like symbolic of like,
that's quite the argument for ass eating that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to defend the ass eaters of the audience. All right. Because I know they're out there. And, you know, I think that I think that's a position that you have to, when you realize, and I've had this discussion before, and I'm not going to say with who. It's with my wife. But I've had this discussion before where I'm like, that to me is more of a symbol of intimacy than a wedding ring. Like I said, it's more of a symbol of intimacy than, because if you look at guys who, you know, they're with a woman and she blows, and this is my opinion, don't take this as anything concrete or anything. If a woman blows a guy, a lot of women see that as just like a hand job, or they see that as like a handshake.
It's nothing.
You know, like it's just a blow job. But to me, a blow job is more of an intimate act than sex itself, because you're basically taking, or if you're a guy and you're going down on a woman or whatever, I think that's more of an intimate act than sex itself, because sex itself is like, it's no different than say like your finger and somebody's ear, really, and unless it's like there's something behind it, right? But if you're using your mouth, which is like your primary source of existence, right? You need to eat and drink in order to continue to live, and you're willing to put that on somebody's private parts, whether it be a penis or a vagina, I think that's more of an intimate act than putting your finger in somebody's ear or putting your penis in somebody's vagina or asshole for that matter. You know, I think that's because there's no connection. I mean, there is a connection there if you're in love, or if there's like it's merely a physical act. Whereas putting your mouth on somebody's genitals, that's like you're taking their whatever, like the most germ populated area of their body.
Yeah.
Into
That's
your
my
mouth,
point.
right? So that's an act of trust and intimacy, as far as I'm concerned. So any chick
I can't argue that. I can't argue that. I agree with you. I think you're right. I think it is an act of trust. I don't think that your argument will sway me, though. I still won't get down there and lick someone's butthole. It's just not something I'm into. I also, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not really a big fan of going down on a chick. I'll do it, you know, because I know like they like that, I guess. But I'm not good at it. I've never been good at it. And like, then here's the other thing is I don't really like the way it looks. I don't want to look at it. You know what I mean? No, I really don't want to look at. I'm not a fan.
And that's like, again, that's a part of what I'm talking about. It's an act of intimacy, because if you don't like it, nobody likes going down on a girl, right? Yeah, because it's a chore, and you don't get anything from it. Because it's an act that you're doing for them out of love or out of, you know, whatever. You want to do something for them. So it's a selfless act of, you know, giving. And so that's why it's a more of an intimate act. Whereas, and the same is true of women. I don't think any woman actually likes blowing a guy. They'll do it and that's the thing with women, is they'll do sex acts to get something. Whereas, you know, a guy will do sex acts.
It's a bartering chip.
It's a tool that they use to get what they want. Whereas guys, we see it as like, I'm not going to give this up unless I actually care about this chick. Because you won't bring a chick home from a bar and go down on them. Not in a million years would you do that. Because for a number of reasons. But a chick will take a guy into the bathroom at the bar and blow a guy for drinks, right? So it's a bartering tool, but for a guy, it's an act of intimacy. So that's my argument for going down. It's something that you don't necessarily do. You don't eat a chick's ass just because, you know, just for something to do. You do it as a sign of, as a token of intimacy or appreciation for that person. It's certainly not
Right.
something you do just whatever. And I think one
So,
day,
like,
V, I hope that you do. I do this every night. I pray that one day you will. I do, and not necessarily for this specifically, but I pray that you'll find the person that will make you whole, and that will make that you will find that you'll connect with, and that will bear your children, perhaps, but somebody that will make you happy. I pray for that often, and just because I want that for you. I want you to feel that connection with another human being. And I hope that one day you do find that the woman, and one day you'll be about to go down on this girl on her ass, and you'll go, man, Tom was right. I am willing to go down on. I am willing to eat this girl's ass because I love her, and for no other reason than that. But yeah, that's my point that I want to make. Let's talk about real quick because we're running out of time. Let's talk about some of these paradoxes real quick, V.
Oh, okay.
Did you want to read the first one?
To be talking about time
Yeah.
travel.
Well, you know what? I let it slide because I wanted to fight you on that topic.
The ass eating.
Yeah, I wanted to push that because there's a lot of people out there who are uncomfortable with the topic, and I highly encourage if you love somebody, eat their ass. Because
That's a
this
shirt
is for the
right
guys,
there, bro.
right? And this is mostly for the guys because I would never encourage a woman to eat a guy's ass, especially unless they shave, which is typically for the gay community. Which, if you're a gay guy, I encourage you to eat your lover's ass. But anyways, as long as he shaves. But it's very difficult to eat a guy's ass, I imagine, with all that hair down there. It's
If you love someone, eat their ass.
yeah, and I'll put that on a sticker.
That's
for you,
definitely a
V.
T-shirt. Yeah.
But did you want to read the first one, the time travel paradoxes, particularly
Sure.
the predestination paradox?
The predestination paradox, 12 monkeys, true crimes, time crimes, sorry, the time traveler's wife, Actually, I saw the time traveler's wife. I remember that one. That's the one where he goes and wins the lottery for her and then like comes back and he dies, but he's still like traveling back to see her. It's like really sad. All right, a predestination paradox occurs when the actions of a person traveling back in time becomes part of past events, and may ultimately cause the event he is trying to prevent to take place. That's interesting. This results in a temporal casualty loop in which event 1 in the past influences event 2 in the future, time travel to the past, which then causes event 1 to occur. With this circular loop of events ensuring that history is not altered by the time traveler, and that any attempts to stop something from happening in the past will simply lead to the cause itself instead of stopping it. This paradox suggests that things are always destined to turn out the same way, and that whatever has happened must happen. That's interesting. That's an interesting like kind of idea. Like that's kind of like fate, right? Like there's no way that you can change time because things are meant to take place. That's interesting. I like that.
You know what that's one of my big things. Now I've read the 11/22/63, the Stephen King book.
How do we not mention that? How do we not? That's a great time travel TV show too.
Right.
Book show.
But it's a TV. I think that's the problem. Is it's like a mini series, and like people have a hard time focusing for longer than an hour and a half. So like I don't include any TV shows. Now that's one of the book is. This is one of the rare cases where I will sing Stephen King's praises, which I think is why I think he's not really a horror writer as he is like just whatever writer. I don't care much for his horror stuff. And I'm a big horror guy, and I'm a big horror guy.
Horror
guy. But I think 11/22/63 is absolutely worth a read. It's a thick book. I mean, you got to read forever. But that's a great example of. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's not really predestination, but it introduces this interesting thing. And this is something that H.G. Wells, we talked about it a little bit, invented time travel with his book, The Time Machine. Right. And everybody has had to abide by H.G. Wells's rules, or they had to explain them, right? Or explain why they deviated from these rules. Now, in 11/22/63, they introduce this new thing where time pushes back, where time tries to stop you from doing
such a great
things.
idea.
And I think that's what would happen in time travel. I think you'd be faced with difficulties, not necessarily obvious ones. Like, for instance, in 11/22/63, there are like periods where like people try to hit him with a car. Like in if you watch the show, I know somebody like tries to plow into the telephone that he's talking on the phone with somebody, and he tries to do something else, and like something very obvious happens. But in the book, there are things like a tree falls down in the road where he's trying to get to a place so he can prevent something from happening, and he's able to like move the tree and get there in time. But it's like just subtle stuff like that to try to stop him. I think time, and the closer you get to major events that will in a drastic way affect the future, I think that's the harder time will push back. And I think that's, I refer to it as the universe pushing back, because I think like the universe is in a way of itself, and this is without getting into a theoretical or a theological discussion. I think that time itself is a thing. So I think time does have a stake in what you do. So the universe, as it were, with or without God's or your God's approval or divine intervention, I think the universe has a way of interacting with you in a way that would stop you from doing certain things or preventing certain things. And the book does a great job of explaining this. And the book is and I hate to recommend a Stephen King book, but if there's any book of his that I really liked, it was 11/22/63. And they like I said, they do a great job of making this argument that the universe pushes back and keeps you from doing certain things. And I think that's what this predestination thing does, is it makes you do the thing that you're trying to prevent, or where you end up, it's gonna happen regardless of whether or not you interfere, even if it means that you're the one that does it. So and I think one of the things that was in that article was that like someone goes back in time to stop somebody from T-boning their wife in a car accident, and they themselves end up being the person who T-bones their wife. Like, that's the sort of thing that I think would happen in those cases. Like, you're a person, you're like a speck, a teeny tiny speck in this barrel full of water. You're like but a drop in this barrel. Like, what good are you going to do to influence any kind of change in this barrel of water? So how dare you think that you can stand up to the universe? That's kind of my opinion on it in this respect. I think that there are alternate paradoxes that I also believe in that you can kind of fight against. But I think you need to recognize, and this is to quote Dave Outlandish, like, you need to recognize that you're nothing. Like, you're basically nothing. You're just a person. Like, and the universe is this infinitesimal thing, and you're trying to go against this infinitesimal thing as a human being. You're nothing. You know, like, how dare you try? But I think that's what I'm like.
Oh man, I gotta. I'm not with you on this one.
Okay, please.
And it's only because like I hate the idea that everything is predestined. I hate that idea that like there's no controlling anything, that like I can do whatever I want and nothing is going to happen the way I want it to because all these events are already planned. And I don't like to think that I'm nothing. I don't like to think that. I like to think that I'm like the most important person in the universe. That's really how I like to think, because first of all, it doesn't make me feel like a piece of shit. Like, if I'm constantly going, I'm nothing all the time, like, well, how is that going to put my mentality? I already have a horrible mentality as it is, just going forward. But if I sat there and went, oh, I can't change anything and I can't, you know, I'm nothing, then like, where does that put me? Like, it's kind of like close to suicide, basically, you know? And so I think the arguments are there. Like, it's hard to like refute some of the things, and like it's hard to not go, well, who really knows, you know, like time, like, fuck, dude, like, does time even exist? And like there's that question that like, does the past even exist anymore? Like, how could we travel to the past, you know, if there's no part of that on this line or whatever we call it, the what's the term, come on, you know the term, it's what is the term for the line that it is time? Not the timeline.
Space-time continuum.
Space-time continuum, whatever. that there's the thing where they say that it just doesn't exist anymore. There's like a theory that says the past does not exist anymore, so you can't go there ever again. Which to me that kind of makes sense. Just based on like, I'm not a smart man and I use what limited logic I have. I go, well, that makes sense. Like, how am I going to go back? How? Like even logically, it seems impossible. Now forward time, like to me, that makes sense. Like if you want to travel to the future, it's literally just figuring out how to freeze yourself in time, right? Like that's what he did in the Time Machine, man. Great fucking book, great fucking movie. If you haven't watched the Time Machine with Guy Pearce, man, it's kind of an oldie. Guy Pearce, and fucking what's his name, Jeremy Irons. He's in it too. Plays a great bad guy. But there's this like it's so good. And you know who else is in it? Is fucking Orlando Jones, the 7 Up Yours guy. Remember?
I used to have that shirt, and I got kicked out of school for it. If you can believe that. I wish I could get my mom on the. I wonder if I can get my mom on the phone. Let me see if I can get my mom on the phone.
But
go ahead, continue.
What was I saying? Yeah, Time Machine. If you watch Time Machine, great fucking movie. But that's what happens to him is he goes forward like it's like 800,000 years into the future. Like that's like what I would do if I had a time machine. I'd go as far into the future just to see like what happens to us. 800,000. But it's not because he chooses. Do we have live via?
Do we have Patricia Miller live via? Hold on. Let's see if she answers.
Is she coming on?
Hold on, it's ringing.
She's gonna screen you.
Oh, she's gonna be fucking so mad.
She's screening.
I know she's not doing nothing.
You're getting screened.
I think so. Oh,
I'll call him tomorrow.
I'm gonna call her husband.
Be like, where's she at?
That's it. Calling her husband.
She's calling her out. But yeah, Time Machine. And I don't like the idea that like there's like I have no, like I can't control anything. I hate that idea. My biggest like the thing I hate most in life is not being able to control things. I hate chaos. Did you get through?
No. You know what? And I'm not going to disagree with you here. What I'm going to say. Oh, hold on. Oh. The predestination thing is actually dealt with on the in that book, that 11/22/63. It's not that he can't get or he can't beat time. It's that it just takes a lot of effort. What he does is he ends up like at one point gosh, I wish she would have answered. It would have been way funnier if she would have answered. Anyways, maybe if she calls back, I'll put her on. But in 11/22/63, it's not that he can't do it. He can't change the outcome, which is obviously, I mean, he obviously can, but it just becomes very difficult. Like time pushes back. And my use of like Dave's thing, like, who are you? You're just a person or whatever. You need to look at yourself more objectively than that. That was more related to like, why would I sell my soul to a demon? Like, why would the demon want my soul? Because I'm like, I'm nobody or whatever. But like he does defeat the universe like multiple times. Like, and
I like to think that my soul is pretty valuable. I think if a demon wanted to bargain for my soul, I'd have a big chip. I'd be like, look, dude, I know I'm crucial. I know I'm crucial in some way.
To be fair, and I would agree with you, and I didn't change. I didn't change it. I hope that you are. I do, and I do believe that you are. In my universe, V, you are a large part of it. I will say that. But you got to remember, like, for me, when I'm thinking of myself, I'm like, well, what impact am I actually having on the universe? Whereas, like, what's that saying that they say, to the world you're just somebody, to somebody you're the world? Like that's kind of the way.
That's a good saying.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way I see you. Is I'm like, I know that you're destined for great things, whereas I myself, I'm like, I have certain expectations of myself, and I don't see myself becoming a household name. For me, I expect you to become the household name, which is what I've been saying since the beginning. I've been sitting here sucking your dick off Like, well, V, I'm waiting. I'm waiting to see your name up on the screen. That's what I want. I want to see your name on the screen, Paul Villalobos, and I want to be the guy who's like, I know that guy, and like it means nothing to the guy next to me, but like I want to be like, I know that guy, and I believed in him since fucking day one because he and I used to do some funny shit on YouTube, and I knew that he would go and make it great, but like me myself, I'm like, well, if I want something bad enough, like if I want to go back in time and I want something bad enough, you know, damn well, good and well, I'm going to do everything in my power to do it. But at the same time, I recognize that the universe is bigger than I am. And I know that I'm going to have to put up a fight.
Okay, so this brings up a really good question. I think I figured out the best question for us to end on here. Okay, here it is. And this might be a tough one for you, but it doesn't have to be like anything super significant. If you could go back in time and change one thing in your life, what would you change? Like you could pull a Marty McFly and like you could, you know, it doesn't have to be your life. You could even go back and like change your parents' lives or anything. If you could go back in time and just adjust one thing, what would it be? Is that a tough one?
That is a tough one. It is a tough one. Because I love where I'm at. I love my wife and my kids and my house, and I have a lot of I have the best friends that I could ask for. I have the best I mean, it doesn't have to be something you know what? I wouldn't go that far back. I would go back to 2017 when we started this show, because I think everything played out the way I wanted it to. Let me do two, okay?
All right.
No, I'm going to take that. I was going to say, one of them was going to be, I would say that I would have lied to the doctor about staying in the army, because that's how I got kicked out of the army, was I told the truth to the doctor. I was like, well, these are my problems that I have, because I didn't want to lie to him. And I decided to tell the truth and be like, hey, I was like, yeah, I have migraines, I have depression, anxiety. I was diagnosed with PTSD by a counselor, and I was I have degenerative disc disease, right? And I take all these medications for it. I was honest with him, and he subsequently initiated 3 fit for duties, which ended up getting me kicked out of the army. Not kicked out, but medically retired. I could still be in the army right now if not for that. I was going to say that would be one, but at the same time, I like where I'm at right now. I'm very happy with where I'm at. The thing that I would change is I would change when I started taking this show seriously, and when I introduced this video format on YouTube to YouTube. That's what I would have changed. Is I would have, like in 2017, rather than sticking with a podcast format, I would have gone straight to a YouTube OBS or Streamlabs OBS format where we were immediately on YouTube, and I would have pushed it harder, because I would have said, we have like, and I'm not going to, I guess I'm going to a little bit suck the dick of everybody in the audience here real quick. But I would say dicks. We have a really loyal audience, and this is something that I talk about often off the air, is we have like the most loyal audience, and it's not like a huge audience, but I'm happy with it. But if I would have taken it more seriously in the beginning, who knows where we'd be right now. And I feel like we'd be a lot further, and we'd probably be at like episode 100 by now if we would have taken it more seriously and done straight to the 150. And frankly, I would have brought you on sooner, because I know we brought you on in like episode 4, and you were like an occasional guest. Or I'm sorry, episode 5, and you were an occasional guest. I think I would have brought you on sooner, because looking back now, and the amount of as funny as we've been, I wouldn't have gotten rid of Dustin, because I think Dustin was an integral part of the show. But I think I would have brought you into the episodes more frequently, and I think I would have left you. I would have done that. Is my recommendation that I would have made to young 2017 Tom. What about you? What's your story?
What would I change if I had time travel? You know what? I do what my dad always says. You know, he always says Looper's his favorite movie because the guy goes back in time to kick his own ass. I'd do that. I'd go back to like when I was in high school, and like when I was like 15 years old and like I started smoking weed and like skateboarding and like that was all that there was to me, I would go back in time and I would slap that shit out of my hand and go, "What are you fucking doing? Stay in school, get your fucking education on point, and do what you're supposed to do so that you can like live a better life in the future. Because this shit, dude, this does nothing for you at all." I probably would go back in time and slap my ass around. Like all my time that I wasted like doing dumb shit. Like it's so like man, that's my biggest regret is that I wasted so much time in my life. Like I didn't do like here I am now, like older, you know, like 30, you know, late 30s, late 30s, and I'm like going, man, I've got like fucking maybe a good another 40 years left in me, you know, so I've got to. Before I enlisted, I went to the Art Institute in California. That's when I first really started studying film. Is I got this like, I got what is it called when you get approved to go to the school? What is that called?
Accepted.
Accepted. I don't know why I couldn't.
This is like last night when I couldn't think of the word for loyalty. What's that thing like when SpongeBob? Like, for the record, anybody who's listening
to the Art Institute.
Last night, V and I were talking, and I said, I appreciate your ... What's the word that I'm looking for? Like when Steven Hillenburg said that he didn't want anybody to make a spin-off of SpongeBob, and then as soon as he died, they made a fucking spin-off of SpongeBob, and V's like, you mean loyalty? And I was like, yeah, that's the word. I don't know. That's what V just went through just now. So I'm glad it was documented.
So I get accepted into the Art Institute before I enlisted into the army, and like if I would have just stayed there and like because I that was like for film, I got accepted for film, and like not at all like so focused on this dumb broad who was like a total whore anyway, like looking back, like why was I even with her? Like if I could go back and go, look dude, this chick is a whore, stop smoking weed and fucking go to school because that's what you're good at. Like the worst part about my life is that like it didn't occur to me that I was good at what I'm good at until like too late. Like well, I don't want to say too late here, right? Like when I was younger, I was good at writing and like I understood film to this extent, but I didn't know that's what I should be doing. And I like went through life where I was going, what be, you know, like what am I good at? And like even ended up going to the military going, this is what I'll do now, and like never really having like a job that like feel like all this weird shit. Even cell phones. I worked at a cell phone kiosk at one point. But all this dumb shit that I did, and I could have just filmed from the beginning. And man, like I look back and I go, you knew, you idiot. You knew you were good at this shit. You knew you were good at writing. You fucking knew. Why didn't you just fucking hone on, zone in on that and just focus on that? And it wasn't until like I got it like after the army that I was like, you know what, I'm pretty good at this writing stuff and I know film well and I understand it. And you know, then I went to some school and started really getting to know it well and going, oh yeah, it turns out this is what I know. I should have been doing that from the beginning. That's my only regret in life, is not starting earlier. Like I know having a time machine, I could